So imagine this. Your stomach plummets deep into your gut. Your heart rate increases rapidly, pushing your heart up into your throat as you hear the blood rush to your ears. Your face becomes uncontrollably hot as you suddenly become aware that it is now a shade brighter than a red tomato. And finally, breathing becomes difficult, almost as if slowly being encased by cement. This is a sensation of intense anxiety, fear, and stress that comes along with one of the greatest challenges that mankind faces. Now, what is this challenge? Getting your first childhood crush. So getting your first childhood crush is incredibly memorable and exciting, but it's also the first time we most likely ever remember feeling worry or stress. And this also marked the first time we needed to start to learn how to deal with these emotions. So I learned everything about how to deal with these emotions by playing golf. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. So I grew up playing competitive golf, and for someone who struggled so much with anxiety and overthinking when they were younger, it was not the right sport for me. The anxiety that I felt playing golf actually destroyed my self-esteem and took away enjoyment that I had in golf and other parts of my life. Now, I felt this way until one day, ironically enough, I was quite late for a tournament. And I drove in quickly, grabbed my golf bag, and sprinted to the tee box, making it just on time. And I was so relieved. And not because I'd made it to the tournament on time, but because my mom thought I was going to be late, and now I didn't have to go home to admit to her that she had been right, because that kills me a little bit on the inside. But guys, and I say guys because I think girls tend to be more aware of everything, the truth is that your mom's always right. But anyhow, the next day I knew the tournament started, and then the round was over, and I had won. Now you have to understand something. Before this day, I played tournament golf for 5 years without a shred of success. And to put that into perspective, that's around 120 tournaments. Can you imagine that? So, understandably so, I was quite shocked. I mean, I couldn't help it. I'll admit to this. I cried a little. And then I cried a lot. And then I almost passed out. It was a very confusing day. But that night, I took the time to think about what had changed. What had changed that allowed me to win? And what I realized was that I was so distracted by the fact that I was late that I forgot that you're supposed to stress and worry over everything when you play golf. And it's no coincidence that the first time I'd done so, I won. That's the day I realized I've been limiting everything in my life but what was going on in my own head. And that's the day I vowed to learn about how to deal with my worries. So after this day, everything in my life improved. But what I was most proud of was that I finally developed a self-esteem. For the first time in my life, I had happiness, personal appreciation, and personal value. And this freed me and gave me a sense of inner peace that I cherish every single day, but also lends me a greater chance of success in everything I do. Now, once my golf career came to an end, I really took the time to think about what I'd learned playing golf. And I took everything I learned and compiled it into 5 key lessons that I use every day of my life in every single part of my life. So let's dive right into one of these lessons, something I like to call caring without worrying. So our current popular view is that worrying always follows caring. And this makes sense when we think about the fact that we only worry about things we truly care about. But what if I told you that the reality actually was that worrying and caring could be completely uncoupled? If this were true, that would mean that you could care about the things and the people that mean most to you, let go of the worries that come along with that, and make room instead for emotions such as enjoyment, appreciation, and happiness. So I have a little story to show that we actually all already do this. So I live in Kingston, Ontario, and for those of you who aren't aware, Kingston, Ontario is chock full of insane drivers and equally insane pedestrians. And this worries me. And this is a combination that should worry us all. So one day, I tried to cross the street, and I suddenly saw a car coming, and I stepped back just in time as the car ripped by me. My heart was racing. Ooh, yeah, it was really racing. And I realized that in that moment, I was scared for my life. And I was scared for my life because I care about my life. Now, I care about my life for the chance of doing the things I enjoy doing and for the prospect of discovering new things I'll enjoy doing in the future. However, it's the case that each and every one of us in this room could die at any moment, and yet we still don't worry about that fact. Now, why don't we worry about that? That's because if we constantly worried about our mortality, it would make us miserable. It would limit your ability to live your life. Therefore, all of us in this room actively practice the reality that caring and worrying can be completely uncoupled, because we care about our lives, but we don't worry about our mortality. So let's bring this back into terms that I originally used to come up with this lesson. So I'm a golfer, right? So in the golf swing, there's a critical moment called the hitting area. And it's situated about 6 inches behind the ball and 6 inches in front. Now, a good golfer knows that if you can pass through this hitting area while only using your large muscles to move the golf club, you produce good, consistent golf shots. But if you worry during this area, you end up trying to micromanage your hands, and this produces consistently horrible golf shots. Now, I remember being paired in a tournament with one of my best friends, and I was lining up for a chip on one of the holes, and the pin was only about 20 feet ahead of me. And I remember getting real nervous, and I thought, man, how embarrassing would it be to mess this up when I'm this close? So I took a few deep breaths, took some practice swings, and this is what happens when you worry in a golf swing. Okay, that's looking good. And I watched in horror as the ball skipped across the green, raced by my roommates, and ended up in a pond. I was so embarrassed, I thought I was going to throw up right there. Now, thankfully, everyone in my group had the peace of mind not to say anything, except for my best friend. He just laughed, and he still hasn't let it go. So what we have to realize is that a golf swing is just like any other moment in our lives that we care about and want to do well. And good golfers have mastered passing through these critical moments without worry. And this is exactly my suggestion. We need to let go of our worries during our critical moments, rather. So before I explain this further, it might be important to understand why we worry. So I love putting this up and just watching people's reactions because everyone looks so confused. They always think, they're like, what is this guy talking about? I want cake. It's like, tomorrow I'm having cake. So let me explain. So I like to make the comparison that worrying is just like rich chocolate cake. And I know that's strange, we just went over that. Full disclosure, I'm a completely strange person. But let me explain. So I'm sure that all of you are familiar with the notion of comfort food. Now, comfort food is something that we eat that's usually quite fatty or quite sugary. And those types of items tend to stay in our stomach for a long time. Blood rushes to our gut, it makes us feel like we want to curl up with a blanket and never do anything ever again. And it's a beautiful thing. Now, if you have one piece of this chocolate cake, that's something I like to call instant gratification. You will feel great. But if you eat the entire chocolate cake, on the other hand, and I see some guilty eyes out there, you guys have done this, this is something I like to call instant regret. You will either feel physically ill for the rest of the night, or you will feel terribly guilty and hate yourself a little bit. Now, worrying is the same way in the sense that worrying is a comforting emotion that comforts us into believing that we care and will do well in the things that mean most to us. And a little bit of worrying is fine. In fact, worrying feels natural because it's a completely natural reaction to have. But just like the chocolate cake, if you worry too much, you can actually make yourself physically ill. Now, you are allowed to let go of your worries in your life if you wish to do so, and be confident that you actually care and will do well in the things that mean most to you. So let's examine a few examples to understand what the reality of worrying actually is. So what about a relationship? I know that when I was younger, I overthought everything in a relationship. And doing so makes that relationship go from incredibly rewarding to downright uncomfortable in a matter of seconds. It limits your abilities to enjoy time with that person. Now, if there was a point to a relationship, I'd have to say it's to enjoy time with someone that you like, right? So if you can't even do that, what's the point? So letting go of worries in a relationship makes more room for emotions such as enjoyment and happiness. And let me tell you, nothing helps a relationship like being happy. So what about schoolwork? Maybe you're writing an exam and it's not going as well as you want it to. And you get to a question, it's on the tip of your tongue, you can almost remember what the professor said, but then you panic. And then you think, I'm going to fail this exam. And then I'm going to flunk out of school. And then I'm going to stay in my parents' basement for the rest of my life and have my mother yell at me forever. And I realize as I'm saying this, my mom's watching this right now. That is a poor choice. But anyways, what did worrying accomplish for us in this scenario? And all it did was limit our ability to think clearly and perform to our capabilities. Letting go of worries in school reduces thought traffic and helps us perform. What about right now, as I'm standing up here delivering this talk? I have to actively practice caring without worrying, because if I didn't, it would have been incredibly obvious that I'm just making this up as we go. So in the end, worrying feels like it helps because it's used as a comfort and a motivator. But the reality is that worrying does no such thing. All that worrying does is ensure lower chances of success and enjoyment in the things that mean most to us. And when we realize this, something we always thought was true gets turned on its head. And we realize that we shouldn't worry because we care. But rather, we should really notice that we care enough not to worry. So now that we understand how to deal with our emotions during our critical moments, what happens when we get an outcome or a result from those critical moments? And what I like to do is something I like to call detaching myself from all results. Now, before I explain this further, I've prepared a little scenario to illustrate my point. So let's examine the case of little Mario. Now, little Mario is a 14-year-old boy who lives in Kingston, Ontario. And he is nothing but a good person, and up to this point in his life, he has only done good things. And one day, it's a frightfully cold Kingston day, and we all know what kind of day I'm talking about. And he notices his elderly neighbor's having trouble walking up her driveway. Now, for fear of her falling, he rushes to her aid. But on the way there, he slips on a patch of ice, slides into her, and knocks her over. I know, it's terrible. This is fictional, just so you know, okay? So it's okay. But does it make sense for little Mario to think through the scenario this way? You know, he thinks, I'm a good person. In this particular case, I tried to do something good. But in the end, I caused something bad to happen, so I must be a bad person. But hang on, that doesn't seem fair. And it doesn't seem fair because I think little Mario is right in saying that he's causally responsible for what happened. Because after all, if he wouldn't have been there, maybe it's the case she would never have fallen. But I don't think any of us in this room would blame him for what happened, let alone say that that makes him a bad person. I mean, that would be the same thing as saying because water freezes, he's a terrible person. Doesn't make any sense. And to push this point a little further, that'd be like saying if this ever happened to me, then that must mean that I'm a bad golfer. I mean, don't get me wrong, that can be true. Sometimes I'm horrible, but not because of this. So I'm sure we can appreciate how ridiculous these two conclusions are. But let me tell you the truth that seems completely apparent to me. People actually do this exact things to themselves every single day. And the place I see it the most is right here in university. And it breaks my heart to see. So I realized this for the first time when I was playing a golf tournament at McCormick Ranch Golf Course in Arizona. And on this very hole, I watched one of my group mates hit a beautiful golf shot. And the ball soared through the air, actually landed in the cup, and then hopped out, went about 40 feet away from the pin. So, I mean, I just laughed. I thought it was funny. But I clapped, and like, what a beautiful golf shot. And I looked over at him, and what did he do? He took his golf club and threw it on the ground and yelled about how he was a terrible golfer because the ball hadn't gone in. Like, it's not just me, right? That's completely ridiculous. Like, to expect that of yourself. So although I was laughing at this reaction, I did realize something in that moment. And what I realized was that if a golf swing could be as perfect as it can be, and the ball still not go in the hole, while I have seen hole-in-ones where the ball never even left the ground, I mean, granted it was mini golf, but same idea, then that must mean that a result is not always an accurate reflection of someone's ability. And I remember having this aha moment and thinking, oh my goodness, I understand. I understand how people can be happy and feel good about themselves regardless of the results that come their way. And here's some of the theory behind it. So by definition, we cannot control a result. And that's because a result is some form of feedback that we get when we put ourselves out there in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's an exam, a tournament, or asking someone out even. So you can prepare yourself in order to increase your chances of doing well in a result. That's true. But in the end, it always comes down to a probability because there's so many other factors that we can't control. So then why would we choose to judge ourselves and form our self-esteem based off something that essentially boils down to chance? I mean, that'd be the same thing as someone asked me, you know, Luke, how do you feel about yourself today? Do you like yourself? And I was like, I don't know. But hand me a pair of dice and we'll find out. So what should we use in order to judge ourselves and form our self-esteem? And if we want to use something that's a complete opposite of a result, let's use something that's always in our control. And the only thing that's always in our control are our choices. And note that a choice is entirely different than an outcome. So for golfers, wind and rain are the bane of our existence. And it's important for golfers to be able to detach their view of their golfing ability from shots that may be affected by wind and rain. Now, students' equivalent of wind and rain are the constant tests, assignments, and presentations they receive. Now, if a student isn't able to detach their view of their drive, motivation, intelligence, and person from grades they receive, they run the risk of quickly destroying their self-esteem, and then the chances of mental illness become alarming. So as students, unfortunately, we have been taught that we are a reflection of our grades. But this is simply not the truth. The only truth is that we can only be a reflection of what we can control. And the only thing we can control are our choices. So what about an example that's more relevant to the non-student population? I think one important result to address goes like this. How do we avoid destroying our self-esteem when we have thoughts that we're ashamed of? And I think one of the most powerful examples of this is a mother's experience. So my mom had 4 kids. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm certainly someone who loves kids, and I think they're great. But let's be completely honest, kids can be little devils from hell sometimes. And I know this because that's exactly how I was. I was an awful child. My poor mother, I love you. Because of this, I'm sure that my mom had a bit of a tough time at one point. And she thought, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And she was most likely ashamed by this thought. Now, I don't think of my mother as the mother or the person that most likely had that thought. I think of her as the person who most likely had that thought and then raised us and loved us. Ladies and gentlemen, my point is that thoughts can scare us. They can be scary. But what's truly important are the choices we make during those times. So in the end, results and achievements are part of our past, and we are allowed to be proud of the ones that went well and to learn from the ones that didn't. But we need to consistently be able to say, regardless of that result, I'm still intelligent. Regardless of that result, I'm still talented. Regardless of that result, I'm still a good person. And in the end, what we truly need to be able to do is detach our self-esteem from our results and attach it instead to our choices. And this is what I mean by detaching myself from all results. So as a concluding point, let's revisit someone that I haven't talked to in many years, a young Luke. This is actually me. So this is a picture of young Luke around the same time that he had his first childhood crush on a girl by the name of Manon. I know, so cute. So around the same time that young Luke had his first childhood crush, there was also someone across the country, at this very school, in fact, who was also nurturing a crush. So this is a picture of 20-year-old Elon Musk, sitting in Hartness Hall as a Queen's student. Now, I bring up Elon's story because his Queen's love story is one that inspires. So he had an eye out for a woman by the name of Justine Wilson. And the story goes that he asked her out upon several occasions, always receiving the same answer, no. But this didn't bother him. He knew she was special, so he kept asking. And one day, he came up with a move that was absolutely brilliant. He went out, bought 2 ice cream cones, and showed up at her house with a smile. With that one ice cream cone, he convinced the girl that didn't want to go out with him to go out with him. Amazing. With the second ice cream cone, he was able to convince her to stay when she had finished the first. Smart, really. So I would tell this story to young Luke and make him realize that there are 2 key things we can learn from Elon's love story. First of all, he consistently detached himself from results, shielding his self-esteem from Justine's initial rejections. And secondly, he was obviously able to let go of his critical moments, or let go of worry during his critical moments. Because let's be honest, pitching yourself to a girl who doesn't want to go out with you over the length of 2 ice cream cones must be pretty damn stressful. So in the end, let's think about where Elon Musk is today. Okay? And I think part of his success is partially due to the fact that he's mastered these 2 lessons. But don't think of Elon and think, wow. Don't marvel at him and think, wow, that's amazing. But rather think, if I master these 2 lessons, I may discover the same potential within myself. And that's what's truly amazing. Thank you.